Legendary singer Maurice White lived a life filled with tragedy and failed relationships, from his troubled personal life to the struggles with his band. White's story is one of heartbreak and failure. Join us as we unravel the truth behind why Maurice White life is so sad.
Everybody relates to fantasy. Because in your fantasy, you can do many things. And life is a fantasy.
Maurice, unstable relationships. Before founding Earth, Wind and Fire, Maurice White played drums with Lewis's trio 2 years earlier. He encountered Marilyn, a cashier of Hispanic descent, during this period. Upon laying eyes on her, Maurice instantly fell head over heels in love. Fortunately, Marilyn shared the same feelings. However, there was a major issue. Marilyn was already wed. Was Maurice, a daring man, deterred by her marital status? Absolutely not. Disregarding the possible scandal, he immersed himself in a passionate relationship with his married partner. At 28 years old, Marilyn was unhappily wed to Salvador, who was a decade her senior. Salvador was employed as Elvis Presley's hairstylist, but Maurice was not concerned about those specifics. Marilyn felt stuck in her marriage and was too scared to seek a divorce because no one in her family had ever gone through a divorce. During a conversation with Dr. Marissa Pay, Marilyn admitted that she accepted the cashier position at the store in order to avoid her unhappy home life, which is where she first met Maurice. She characterized their first meeting as electric. Initially, Maurice did not give her much notice. While the rest of the band attempted to chat with her, Maurice only briefly looked in her direction. However, when he eventually glanced at her, she sensed a connection. She remembered feeling as if flames were engulfing her from within. His eyes blinked, and the fire traveled to his lips, causing shivers down my spine with his grin. Maurice ended up inviting her to have dinner. After Marilyn disclosed her marital status, he fearlessly proposed that she should also invite her spouse. Certainly, she did not. That night, Marilyn and Maurice connected immediately, bonding over their mutual passion for jazz and solitude. Their rapid and intense romance was like a whirlwind. Marilyn characterized their passion as one that ignited exciting escapades, visiting various cities, embarking on coastal drives, and even purchasing a home in Carmel Valley. Despite being deeply in love, Maurice was not faithful to only one woman. He kept dating other women, causing tension in their relationship. Marilyn frequently detected the fragrance of other women on him when he arrived home. 4 years after their first meeting in 1970, Maurice welcomed his first child, a daughter named Hamea, in 1974. Speculations emerged that Hamea was not Marilyn's biological child, and Maurice disclosed in his memoir that Evelyn Carter was the birth mother of his eldest offspring. In spite of the challenges in their relationship, Marilyn eventually had a child with Maurice, who they named Sin White. Despite popular belief, Marilyn and Maurice never tied the knot. Marilyn clarified that she was pregnant when Maurice proposed, but she rejected his offer.
We were exposed to all different types of music because we had to play clubs. And in playing clubs, you had to play all different types of clubs. So for that reason,
The trauma from her previous marriage continued to haunt her, making her unwilling to take that path again. Maurice had 3 children with 3 different women, but he never married any of them, adding to the gossip about his romantic life. In his autobiography, Maurice admitted that the woman named Eden, who is the mother of his most recent child, is his true soulmate. This disclosure further complicated his already disputed romantic past. Maurice was also involved with numerous well-known women throughout the years, such as Jennifer Holliday, Chaka Khan, Angie Stone, and Denise Williams. Out of all the speculated relationships, his bond with Angie Stone appeared to be the most credible. Many people thought that their strong onstage connection in the 1990s was genuine, despite both of them never admitting to it. Reflecting on the past, Maurice acknowledged that his interactions with women were one of his major sources of regret. He regretted not having ever settled down. However, what caused him even greater pain was the lack of closeness he had with his children. Marilyn verified that Maurice was always absent when it came to raising his son Sin. Her memory recalled Maurice's first nerves when attempting to hold the baby for the first time, fearing he could harm the child. Maurice probably had difficulty bonding with his children due to his isolated upbringing. During the final 6 years of his life, Maurice made an effort to repair his relationships with his children, trying to compensate for the time he had missed. However, his previous decisions had a long-lasting effect on his personal life and the people he cared about. His experiences with love, passion, and regret revealed the complexities of a man who, despite being a musical genius, had similar struggles to anyone in matters of the heart. But Maurice's struggles did not start in his later years. They began when he was very young. How do you think he navigated these challenges, especially growing up in a city marked by racism? Maurice's early struggles. Maurice White was raised by his grandmother in the housing projects of South Memphis, Tennessee. They were impoverished, residing in affordable housing, surrounded by black families facing difficulties. Despite being married to a doctor and saxophonist named Verdine Adams, Maurice's mother, Edna Parker, resided in Chicago, far from her husband. During the majority of his youth, Maurice lacked a fatherly figure or a strong mentor. Maurice's grandmother was industrious and devout, yet he encountered numerous challenges in his difficult life. Growing up in a tough community with a high prevalence of substance abuse, Maurice managed to steer clear of negative behaviors. He began his career as a paperboy, dropping off newspapers at homes in predominantly white areas. This was the place where he encountered the brutal truth of racism, leaving a lasting impact on his life. During his delivery route in a predominantly white neighborhood, he was approached by a police car one night. The officers disregarded Maurice's young age, despite him being a teenager. They assaulted him, yelling racist remarks and ripping apart the newspapers he was distributing. In his memoir, Maurice recalled that they had ceased their activities, returned to their cruiser nonchalantly, and driven away. He noted that their laughter had grown more distant as they moved further away, leaving him there, perspiring and trembling in the chilly evening breeze, feeling as though he had urinated on himself. The night had a lasting impact on Maurice, causing trauma. He promised that in case the police stopped him again, he would flee and conceal himself. He spent months in a state of constant anxiety due to the presence of the police and authorities. Even after he moved to Chicago to live with his mother and stepfather, this fear continued to linger with him. Even with difficulties, Maurice discovered his passion for music in his grandmother's church, where he was touched by the music of hymns and drums. His love for music intensified when he moved to Chicago and joined the Chicago Conservatory of Music.
Idols as far as singing. I think they probably influenced me more than anyone else. And also Ray Charles influenced slide too. You can hear it in slides.
Nevertheless, the music industry was unwelcoming towards black artists during that period, causing Maurice to have a hard time finding his place. Maurice was committed to achieving success by playing drums at different clubs and working at Chess Records. In the end, he became a member of a jazz trio composed entirely of black musicians, with pianist Ramsey Lewis at the helm. Maurice spent a decade playing with this trio, acquiring valuable experience. However, he had grander aspirations. In 1969, Maurice opted to start his band with his younger sibling, Verdine Adams, who eventually adopted the last name White. They established a group named the Salty Peppers, alongside 9 additional members. Yet, their music failed to leave a significant impression, and the band did not soar as Maurice had envisioned. While Maurice was celebrated for his remarkable collaborations, few were aware of the controversies surrounding him. We must first examine his legendary partnerships to understand how such an iconic artist faced significant challenges within his band, ultimately leading to their downfall. Maurice's legendary partnerships. Maurice White, a skilled musician and producer, collaborated with numerous famous artists throughout his career. He had a career full of partnerships that showcased the best in him and his colleagues. In 1970, White was the drummer on Minnie Riperton's first album, Come to My Garden. Minnie previously fronted Rotary Connection, and her solo album highlighted her skills as a musician. White's input was instrumental in paving the way for Riperton's success. White released Sun Goddess, an album by Ramsey Lewis, in 1974. This project achieved great success, peaking at number 1 on the Billboard Top Soul Albums chart and number 12 on the Billboard Top Pop Albums chart. The album received a gold certification from the RIAA, cementing its position in music history. In 1976, after 2 years, White collaborated with Charles Stepney to create Lewis's next album, Salongo. It climbed to the 7th spot on the Billboard Jazz Albums chart and the 17th spot on the Top Soul Albums chart, demonstrating White's talent in producing popular songs. In 1978, White collaborated on Yuma Deodato's record Love Island, receiving credit as a songwriter. The album reached the 20th position on the Billboard Jazz Albums chart. During that year, White acted as the executive producer for the R&B group Pocket's record Take It On Up, reaching number 22 on the Billboard Top R&B Albums chart. In addition, in 1978, White collaborated with Denise Williams for the Weather Report album Mr. Gone, which was distributed by ARC Records, a record company that he established. Mr. Gone reached the top spot on the Billboard Jazz Albums chart. White kept working with Weather Report on their subsequent records, including 830, Night Passage, and Weather Report, all of which were put out on ARC. Entering the 1980s, White maintained collaborations with high-caliber artists. He teamed up with Ramsey Lewis once more for the record routes in 1980. He also played a role in the creation of the album The Hawkins Family by gospel artist Walter Hawkins, which received a Grammy nomination. In that very year, White collaborated with Barry Manilow, creating music for Manilow's album Barry, which achieved platinum status in the United States. In 1983, White made a cameo on the Tubes album Outside Inside. That year, he later made Jennifer Holliday's Feel My Soul album, which was nominated for a Grammy. In 1984, White released Emotion, a record by Barbra Streisand. White's production skills were further proven with the album reaching platinum status in the US. In 1985, he also worked on Ramsey Lewis's album Fantasy, which peaked at number 13 on the Cashbox Jazz Albums chart. 1 year later, White was featured as a guest artist on Lee Ritenour's Grammy-nominated album Earth Run. In 1986, he collaborated in producing pieces of a Dreams album Joyride, which reached number 3 on the Billboard Traditional Jazz Albums chart and number 18 on the Top Soul Albums chart. In that exact year, White was the producer for Neil Diamond's album Headed for the Future, which received a gold certification from the RIAA. In 1987, he collaborated with Atlantic Starr on their album All in the Name of Love, reaching platinum status in the US. He also featured on Cher's self-titled album, which achieved platinum certification. In 1987, White worked with Ramsey Lewis again, this time contributing percussion and co-producing Lewis' album Keys to the City. The album peaked at number 22 on the Billboard Top Contemporary Jazz Albums chart. In 1992, White was responsible for producing El DeBarge's album In the Storm, which reached number 22 on the UK Blues and Soul Top UK Soul Albums chart.
I had a chance to bring the music to like another level and just experiment with it out with the people. And I would take the music.
In 1994, White collaborated with the Japanese group Dreams Come True on 2 songs, Wherever You Are from their album Delicious and Eternity, included on the soundtrack for the animated movie The Swan Princess. In 1993, White was the producer for Ramsey Lewis's album Sky Islands. The album made it to number 4 on the Billboard Contemporary Jazz Albums chart and number 6 on the Top Jazz Albums chart. He was also featured on Marcus Miller's record, The Sun Don't Lie, reaching the top 10 on the Billboard Jazz Albums list. In 1995, White released the first album by Urban Nights, Urban Nights The Furpwas, featuring Ramsey Lewis, Omar Hakim, Freddie Hubbard, The Emotions, and Grover Washington Jr. It peaked at number 5 on the US Billboard Jazz Albums chart and number 9 on the UK Jazz and Blues Albums chart. That year, White teamed up with the British soul group D-Influence for their track Midnight on the album Prayer for Unity. The track hit number 11 on the UK R&B singles chart and number 24 on the UK dance singles chart. In 1996, White established Kalimba Records, his record label. He released Urban Nights 2, the next album by Urban Nights, with Ramsey Lewis and other talented musicians like Paulinho da Costa, Verdine White, Jonathan Butler, and Naji. The album made it to the 7th spot on the US Billboard Jazz Albums chart and the 24th spot on the UK Jazz and Blues Album chart. In 1998, White managed the British girl group Cleopatra on their album Comin' Atcha, reaching number 20 on the UK Albums chart and earning a silver certification from the BPI. In 2000, White was the executive producer for Paul Taylor's album Undercover, which peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Jazz Albums chart. He later made a guest appearance on Kirk Whalam's 2003 album Into My Soul. White teamed up with the French jazz group No Jazz in 2006 for their album Have Fun, contributing to the songs Nobody Else and Cool. The song Cool was the first collaboration between White and Stevie Wonder. White acted as executive producer for a tribute album called Interpretations, celebrating the music of Earth, Wind and Fire in 2007, which was released by Stax Records. The album peaked at number 28 on the Billboard Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. It included performers such as Chaka Khan, Musique Soulchild, Mint Condition, Kirk Franklin, and Angie Stone. Kirk Franklin's version of September made it to the 17th spot on the Billboard Adult R&B Songs chart, with Dwill's rendition of That's the Way of the World and Meshel and DiGiocello's cover of Fantasy receiving Grammy Award nominations. In 2008, White collaborated with jazz musician Brian Culbertson on the production of Bringing Back the Funk. The album peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Jazz Albums chart and at number 18th on the Top R&B Hip Hop Albums chart. It included performers such as Ray Parker Jr., Bootsy Collins, Ledisi, and Larry Dunn. A track from the album, Always Remember, made it to the top spot on the Billboard Smooth Jazz Songs chart. Culbertson conveyed his appreciation for collaborating with White, mentioning that he had gained extensive knowledge from the esteemed producer. What were the root causes of these issues, and which of Morris's collaborations is said to have haunted him, even till his last days? Maurice White's legal battle. In 1976, Maurice White and Charles Stepney collaborated on producing Denise Williams' first album, This Is Niecy. Williams, who used to be a backup singer for Stevie Wonder's band Wonderlove, was prepared to start her career as a solo artist. Unfortunately, Stepney tragically passed away while the album was being recorded. White, who was already heavily engaged in the project, assumed the role of the main producer and finished the album. The album was launched in August 1976 by Columbia Records.
We didn't have YouTube then because it would have been the #1. And you could see Maurice went, oh,
representing the first significant release from Kalimba Productions, a company established by White and Stepney in that year. This Is Niecy experienced immediate success. It peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard Top Soul Albums chart and achieved number 33 on the US Billboard 200. One of the standout songs, Free, had a big impact, reaching number 25 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and number 2 on the US Billboard Hot Soul Songs chart. It also topped the UK Pop Singles chart, making Williams a global sensation. The album received gold certification in the US and silver in the UK. Expanding on this achievement, White was behind Williams' second album, Songbird, which hit the shelves in 1977. Although it did not achieve the same level of success as her first album, it still did well. reaching number 23 on the US Billboard Top Soul Albums chart. It reached the 5th position on the Blues and Soul Top British Soul Albums chart in the UK. The hit song Baby Baby My Love's All For You reached number 13 on the US Billboard Hot Soul Songs chart and made it into the UK Top 10. Williams kept working with Maurice White, and together they released That's What Friends Are For in 1978 through Columbia Records for Kalimba Productions. In the subsequent year, she launched When Love Comes Calling on ARC Records, a label founded by White through Columbia. Maurice also made an appearance as a guest artist on the album, which reached number 27 on the US Billboard Top Soul Albums chart. The song I've Got the Next Dance reached the number 1 spot on the Billboard Dance Club Play chart, strengthening Williams' status as an up-and-coming artist. During the early 1980s, Williams put out 2 additional album projects, My Melody in 1981 and Nisi in 1982, both under ARC Records. Throughout the years, she frequently reminisced about her experiences working alongside Maurice White, referring to him as a mentor who educated her on the intricacies of the music industry. During a 2007 interview, Williams reflected on his experience, saying that he had enjoyed collaborating with Maurice White and that White had taught him about the music industry, as well as how to organize and execute a plan in a show. In 2012, Maurice White was involved in a significant legal dispute that had a major impact on the music business. Charles Stepney's offspring filed a lawsuit against White, alleging that he owed them substantial royalties for work done by their deceased father, who was instrumental in Earth, Wind & Fire's achievements. Despite Stepney's death more than 30 years ago, the problem of unpaid royalties remained unresolved. The situation sparked a buzz, leading to numerous fans and media sources discussing White's potential role. However, Maurice stayed firm, maintaining that he did not owe any funds to Stepney's inheritance. He requested for the court to throw out the case, reiterating his stance that no commitments were made concerning extra royalties. This dispute was widely covered for weeks, shining a light on the sometimes unclear realm of music royalties and bringing attention to the financial challenges that artists and their families may face, even after a collaborator has passed away. Although some portrayed this time as one of the lowest points in Maurice White's life, it also highlighted the intricacies of the music business and the obstacles artists encounter when handling the legacies of their close collaborators. The situation highlighted how lingering problems can affect the industry for a long time, even after the music has left its impact. However, the challenges faced by Maurice because of his music went far beyond this. His band was said to be one of the factors contributing to his death. Keep on watching to find out why and what kind of controversies they faced. The controversies behind the band. The tale of the iconic group, Earth, Wind & Fire, is marked by success and challenges. The excitement started when Maurice White created a band that would later become globally famous. Nevertheless, amidst their great achievements, the band encountered various internal conflicts and individual challenges, mainly due to White's approach to leadership. Philip Bailey, one of the main singers in the group, detailed these difficulties in his book Shining Star. Bailey stated that White's dominating leadership style caused ongoing tension within the group, resulting in a break in the mid-1980s. Prior to the break, the band encountered challenges while attempting to establish themselves in the competitive music industry. Maurice White and the band members were committed to ensuring the success of Earth, Wind & Fire, EWF, and dedicated numerous hours to recording in the studio. Their first album, which was named after the band, was released in 1977, and they followed it up with The Need of Love in the following year. Nevertheless, White was very disappointed with the poor performance of these albums. In reaction, White made a daring and divisive choice. He dismissed all the band members except his brother, Verdine White, who was the bass player. 7 musicians were dismissed and replaced by White with 9 new members, including singer Philip Bailey. In 1974, this updated edition of EWF achieved its first big success with the release of the album Open Our Eyes. However, even with this success, White still had many challenges ahead. One of the alterations he had implemented within the group was adding a female singer named Jessica Cleaves. With the addition of Cleaves to the group, there are now 3 vocalists. Nevertheless, this decision became an additional problem for White. Bailey's memoir indicates that working with Cleaves was challenging. She started skipping shows, and to make matters worse, battled with addiction issues. Bailey praised Cleaves, saying she was kind and had beautiful eyes and a great voice. But White did not have positive things to say. He highlighted her substance issues in his memoir, but did not share any positive memories of her. After Cleaves chose to leave the band, Maurice White made the decision to maintain an all-male lineup and not add any more female vocalists. Despite the change, further issues quickly arose. In 1976, there was a tragic event when Charles Stepney, who was a close friend of White and produced many of EWF's hits, passed away due to a heart attack while they were recording the album Spirit. White was devastated by the unexpected death of Stepney, as he had held out hope for his recovery. Reflecting on his sorrow, White realized that death, whether anticipated or abrupt, always takes one by surprise. In 1979, White experienced another personal tragedy when his mother died 2 years later. In spite of these setbacks, EWF was flourishing and becoming increasingly popular in the 1970s. However, as the band gained popularity, conflicts within the group also grew. The band members started to feel bitterness towards White due to his strict leadership approach. In 1980, guitarist Al McKay became dissatisfied with the division of money between Maurice White and the other members of the group. This resulted in intense disputes between McKay and White. Bailey's memoir described Cleaves as challenging to collaborate with. White acknowledged in his memoir that he and McKay would have intense disagreements, occasionally leading them to leave the studio to prevent a negative atmosphere. During his tour in South America, McKay finally revealed his decision to leave the band. Despite his change of mind and choice to remain, White ended up terminating him when McKay declined to travel with the team to their following performance in Mexico. McKay leaving the band signified a pivotal moment. After he left, other members felt more confident to express their discontent with White's leadership. They believed he was overly dominating, disregarding their thoughts or recommendations. Despite this, White stood his ground, convinced that several band members did not grasp his vision for the group. Even though he tried to alleviate the tension by having one-on-one meetings with each band member, the dissatisfaction continued. At the same time, White was becoming more and more unhappy with the band's sound. While working on the creation of EWF's last album for a few years, he started experiencing a lack of creative freedom. In his memoir, White likened the experience to having a huge dam impeding his creative flow. He began considering going solo in order to achieve success on his own. In 1983, his dissatisfaction peaked when EWF's record Electric Universe flopped, signaling a significant drop from their previous successes. EWF transitioned from performing in concert halls to facing challenges in the recording studio, prompting White to take a bold step by placing the band on an indefinite break. The news was surprising to the rest of the group, including his sibling, Verdine White. Maurice White nonchalantly announced at his house, "The group is taking a break. We have collaborated for more than 12 years. Now it's time to work independently." He felt unsure about whether or when they would get back together, making the band members feel like the ground had been taken out from beneath them. This choice put numerous members in a difficult situation. Some of them had to seek employment in other fields in order to support themselves without EWF. White himself faced challenges too. His solo career did not achieve the success he was expecting. Although his solo album in 1984 had the potential for pop hits, it did not live up to expectations, as the New York Times described his singles as pop fizzles. Moreover, his age started being talked about, something White was not fond of. In an interview, he openly voiced his frustration by stating, Age can pose limitations in this industry. The break was even harder for the rest of the band members. Some of them ended up losing their homes and experiencing emotional breakdowns. The level of tension between Maurice and Verdine White increased significantly, putting a strain on their brotherly relationship. The band members were left feeling adrift after the group disbanded, as percussionist Ralph Johnson later revealed in an interview. Johnson stated that this was the extent of our knowledge and possessions. When someone suddenly removes that support, you have to completely reevaluate your plan. At the same time, White's other business endeavors were also unsuccessful. His ARC record label, the American Recording Company, fell apart. The company's success was closely tied to EAWF. So when the band went on a break, the label also fell apart quickly. Even with these challenges, Maurice White's life was not without controversies. A significant event was when he collaborated with Barbra Streisand on her album Emotion in 1984. White created 3 songs for the album, but none were chosen as singles, causing him frustration. To make matters worse, White later found out that Streisand had returned to the studio without notifying him and made changes to the songs. During the interview, he expressed his displeasure, asking that people have the decency to inform him. He mentioned that he would collaborate with Streisand once more only on the condition that he could produce the whole album. However, when the decade of the 1980s was ending, a positive event occurred. The band got back together. Former members of EWF reunited to record an album, rekindling their bond. Just when it seemed like things were getting better, another tragedy happened. Don Myrick, a previous EWF saxophonist, was fired and fatally wounded by a law enforcement officer in Santa Monica in 1993. The officers unlawfully entered his residence and tragically ended his life after confusing a butane lighter for a weapon. White was reminded of past personal tragedies by Myrick's death, bringing back painful memories. Myrick's mother, backed by the band, took legal action against the city and received $400,000 in a settlement. Following this event, White's health deteriorated. Philip Bailey later recounted the challenges he faced in learning about White's illness, stating that it took immense bravery for White to eventually acknowledge the severity of it. How did Maurice manage to face his disease alone? How long did he battle it before his death? And what were his last days like? Silent struggles with Parkinson's. Maurice White received a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, which is a debilitating condition that impacts the brain's control over movement. Parkinson's disease is caused by the death or damage of nerve cells in the substantia nigra region of the brain, leading to a decrease in dopamine levels, crucial for motor function. As the condition advances, it progresses into a neurodegenerative illness over time. Diagnosing White, an international music star, was extremely difficult. Having Parkinson's disease required White to adhere to a strict diet and lifestyle, which was difficult to maintain while on tours. It was a devastating setback for him, as he had constantly prioritized his health, making every effort to maintain a fit lifestyle. In spite of his attempts, his health continued to decline. Recognized for his optimistic attitude, White hid his sickness from the public for a long time. He did not reveal what he was struggling with to his bandmates until the early 1990s. In 1994, White ceased live performances with Earth, Wind & Fire, making it the band's first show without him. However, he kept playing a role behind the scenes, directing the band's path. During March of 2012, White was confronted with a legal dispute by the children of Charles Stepney, who took legal action against him for royalties they believed their father was entitled to dating back to 1970. White remained steadfast, asserting that no commitments were made, and he declined to make any payments. He stayed strong and resolute during the entire case, refusing to be influenced into doing something he disagreed with. Even though the legal dispute was getting a lot of attention in the media, White still chose to handle his illness in a private manner, facing his final public scandal before the illness started affecting him more. But this wasn't the end of Maurice's struggles. In his final days, he was falsely proclaimed dead by the world, even while he was still alive. How tragic is that? His death rumors and reality. On December 21st, 2012, rumors began circulating online about the death of soul and R&B icon Maurice White. The rumors appeared so believable that Wikipedia briefly altered his page, showing December 21st as his date of death. Up-and-coming rapper Q-Tip, mourning the loss of one of his idols, Maurice White, shared his sorrow on Twitter, stating, "R.I.P." Nevertheless, those rumors were promptly proven false. Members of Earth, Wind & Fire went on the band's official Facebook page to clear up any misunderstandings. The message stated that Maurice White is alive and in good health. The rumors circulating online are not true. Please help to pass on the message. Q-Tip removed his tweet, and Maurice's Wikipedia page was quickly edited. Unfortunately, only a couple of years later, the world bid farewell to Maurice White. On February 4th, 2016, White peacefully died in his sleep at his residence in Los Angeles. Following a lengthy struggle with Parkinson's disease, the iconic musician, songwriter, and creator of Earth, Wind & Fire passed away at 74, leaving a powerful impact on the music industry. So what do you think about Jackie Wilson's tragic life? Let us know in the comments. If you want more interesting revelations, be sure to like, subscribe, and watch the next video shown on your screen. See you there.